Deputy Mayor, we are now live and recording.
Good.
And we're
Thank
just
you
waiting
very much.
for one more councillor to join us, but you do have quorum.
Okay, thank you very much. Regular council meeting for May the 17th, 2022. Welcome, everyone. Before we begin, I'd like to remind you that the meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the Township YouTube channel. Mayor J. Mary Jones is not able to attend tonight. He's got an urgent matter that he cannot attend tonight. Please use the raise hand button along with your physical hand if you'd like to speak on a matter, and I'll call on you. I'd like to now call a roll for council members. Please raise your hand and state your presence when I call your name. Councillor Watt.
Present.
Councillor Landsman. She'll be along shortly, I assume. Councillor Watson.
Present.
And along we have staff, our Chief Administrative Officer, Alana Arthurs. Alana. Acting Clerk, Martina Chait Hartwig. Martina. Interim Treasurer, Paul Kramer. Thank you, Paul. Chief Building Official, Brian Fawcett. Thank you. And Manager of Public Works, Jake Condon. Unable to attend, our Manager of Recreational Facilities, Mike Mood. With a quorum in attendance, I call the meeting to order. Land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that we are on the treaty and traditional territory of the Michi-Saginaw Anishinaabeg First Nation. We offer our gratitude for the First Nations for their care and teachings about our earth, water, and our relations. May we honor those teachings. A moment of silent reflection. We'll hold a minute of silence on our responsibilities and duties as council and as a municipality. Okay, thank you. Any disclosure of pecuniary issue with any of the items? Okay, adoption of the agenda. Good. Heather, move that, and Tom, second it, and all in favor? It's carried. Okay, first item is the adoption of the minutes and business arising from previous minutes. Council meeting May 3rd as amended. Is there a mover and seconder or any issues with those minutes? Tom,
I'll move the minutes.
A question or do you want to move?
No, I'll move the minutes.
Seconder Heather. Okay, thank you. And will you second them, Heather? All in favor? Carried. Okay, Martina, I wonder if somebody should call Sheila.
Through your deputy mayor, Sheila is trying. She sent me a message saying that she was having a hard time getting on, and she's just trying again. So if we can give her a second or so and let her try again, she's gone completely. There we are.
There she is.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, Sheila Lansman is now present. Okay, now consent agenda. There's no items on the consent agenda. We have a delegation. This delegation is Michael Gisinke. Whether I pronounce that okay or not, he wants to talk to us about the 8th line Dummer ward. This has been before council before, and there's research in our package relative to this. And his request is to remove the requirement for a 30-meter turnaround circle and to begin work on the 8th line allowance north of Center Dummer Road. So Mike, looks like you're in a vehicle somewhere. Hopefully you're comfortable.
Yeah, I am. Hello, everyone.
Yeah, would you like to proceed? You have 10 minutes.
Yes, please.
10 minutes to in your delegation.
Okay. Well, nice to see everyone once more. So how it is as you all most likely already know, because you read all the documents, we have purchased this lot about 3 years ago via tax sale directly from the township, And the only information that we had at the time of the location of the parcel is the GIS mapping that eventually proved to be incorrect according to the surveyor. And as soon as we followed all the procedures, whatever the township and the conservation authority has set, and we came to a problem that the property boundaries are not the same as it is on the mapping, and there is a issue with the pond that is on the way there at the very northern portion. And according to autonomy conservation authorities and Beacon Environmental is the company that was doing the EIS studies throughout those 3 years. They said that continuation of the EIS on the pond portion may lead to costs up to hundreds of thousands of dollars. I will be honest, this is more than we can afford, especially without any concrete evidence of getting an approval at the end of all those studies. And obviously, this amount does not include the construction of the road itself and the materials needed for it. Also, at previous council meetings, the council made a decision that they will not adopt this road and not maintain it at the time. That was the decision, and pretty much based on all of that, we asked to amend the requirement of the 30 by 30 meter turnaround, just because the road does not reach our property line limits according to the to whatever is going on the field. And not to pursue to try to cross the pond with the construction of the road. So the EIS that was done, it shows the road being the proposed road being built up to the pond itself, but because it does not reach the property lines, we cannot make it wide enough. The 30 meters, the extra 10 meters that was supposed to be deeded from our property to the township, we are not reaching this. So therefore, we cannot give it to the township, even though we want to. But so basically, we're asking to, if possible, please, to amend this 30 by 30 meters, so we can make it 20 by 30, we can make it 20 by 40, to make it big enough so we can gain ease of access to our lot. We're trying to do it for 3 years now already. It's going to be actually 3 years in August, which is fairly soon. And that's it. That's what we're asking for. So we have the survey, we have the EIS, we have ORCA's approval on this EIS that was done.
So I guess if I read this right, we will not be extending the road to your property then? Is that correct?
Yes, it will almost, I mean, like I believe it's 45 meters or so, will not reach the property line itself, but making the road, sorry, I got something calling me, but making the road, extending the road by a kilometer, which we don't have to travel by foot, it's a great deal for all of us.
Okay, now, Ilana or Jake, do you want to give council more information about this? I think one of the big things about extending roads, the reason for the 30-meter turner circle is to, if we're maintaining the road, to have our snowplow trucks turn around. Is there an alternative to that, Jake or Ilana, or?
For you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I believe Martina could speak to it a little clearer through the planning process.
Sure, thank you.
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. From my understanding of the EIS, the survey and the other information we have from Michael and his team, the road won't be able to reach their property because of a wetland feature that sits in the middle of the road allowance, which would be very trying to navigate and get around.
Yeah.
While staying within that road allowance that's provided.
Okay.
Michael did mention a decision by council not to provide service to this road if it were to be opened. I don't actually have that as a resolution. It may have been a comment, but it wasn't a official council decision. So it may have been a comment, but it wasn't a decision. And we do request that 30-meter circle to allow snowplow trucks and emergency vehicles to access the site safely if there was an emergency that took place. The road currently has at its terminus right now a turning circle, so we would want to see that. And we've asked for that in other cases where people have extended road allowances to access for their properties that are landlocked. So
really the question would be, we would not be maintaining the road beyond the existing circle. Is that?
Sorry, through you, Deputy Mayor. No, the maintenance of the road is not in question today. The question is, would council be willing to remove the requirement for the turning circle? That's what Michael's asking council to consider today, based on the information that's been provided thus far.
So I guess if we're not maintaining the road, there would be no need for a circle. Is that correct, Martina?
Well, you could potentially need some type of larger space because heaven forbid a fire truck or something like that needs to get back there, an ambulance. It would be very trying for them to have to back their way out. So.
Okay, is there some alternative, Michael, or?
I'm actually trying to get an alternative, I guess, from all of you. You are way more experienced than me in this matter. I'm just asking for your help on this matter. We cannot afford to spend that much money for something that will never be ours. Technically, it's a city municipal property. It's going to be a municipal road, but we do want and need access to it. So we're willing to not reach our property lines, but at least get a closer, so we can travel with our vehicle closer to the property. I don't know if there is any alternative. I mean, I myself, I'm an automotive technician and I work on small and big trucks, and 20 by 40 meter, but this is my personal opinion. I know it doesn't count, but 20 by 40 meter, you can turn any fire truck, you can turn a semi-trailer on that spot. I mean, and I slightly disagree with Martina that the issue of maintaining the road or not should not be addressed at the moment, because I believe that it's actually very important. Because if the city would not be maintaining the road, then in my understanding, there is no real need for a 30 by 30 meter turnaround. I understand that this is the standard requirements, and I do understand that, but here I am asking you to amend this requirement. If possible, of course, please.
Okay, thank you, Michael. I, as a chair of this council tonight, I'm not an expert in this field. Certainly, Mr. Condon or other road builders in the area may very well be able to help you come up with an alternative, but individual that could be building on a piece of property, we don't want emergencies, but emergencies do happen from time to time, whether an ambulance or a fire truck or something else that would need to get in this road. So would it be a thought, Michael, to meet with either road construction people or Mr. Condon?
Okay, I do. I'm not sure I'm following you. How does a road construction company can extend what is going to take from my neighbor another 10 meters of land, or how would they help me to find an alternative?
I guess you need a plan first, and then I guess.
Well, we do have a plan.
Okay. If
We
the
do have a plan, and it's on file, and it's in the supporting documents.
Okay, and it's, is that plan been accepted by staff as acceptable?
Yes. Well, by Autonomy Conservation Agency, yes. But the only discrepancy that we have with the city planning staff or building department, I'm sorry if I'm not naming them correctly, is the 30 by 30 meter. We cannot extend the extra 10 meters because it's going to be on the neighboring properties.
Okay.
And I cannot, I've tried talking to the neighboring properties and they're not willing to help, like yeah, they don't want. Yeah, by no means so we build or take or buy the small piece of land from them in order to deed it to the township. They are against it. There is no way of going around this pond. There is no way of going onto the neighboring properties. They do not want that. So I do not see any like the only two ideas that I see at the moment is if possible to amend this, and the second is to spend God knows how much, and without any evidence that the Autonomy Conservation will actually allow construction in the wetland itself.
Okay, Alana, is there any suggestion here on moving this forward, or Brian?
For you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I believe Brian just had another comment about another issue that we might have potentially with parking. So I'll let him go ahead and speak to that first.
Okay, go ahead, Brian.
Thank you. Through you, Deputy Mayor. Just one point to consider as well is that if the road is constructed up to the property but does not include a turnaround, really the intent of the turnaround is, as Martina has said, to facilitate the turning of vehicles at the end, whether it's municipal vehicles or emergency services vehicles. But once that turnaround is there, then the property owner that is serving would then have a driveway generally off of that they access their property and park their vehicles on their property. In this circumstance, if there's no turnaround at the end, regardless of, or if there's a turn, basically when it gets to the end, there's no access to this applicant's property directly from the end of that road. They're still a little bit short. And so I believe the understanding or the intention of his application is that he wants to build the road to the end without a turnaround, like a turnaround to the policy standard that would not access his property. So just the main issue that I could foresee from an enforcement bylaw issue would be parking vehicles at the end of the road allowance, and whether or not that would then become an issue, because we don't permit parking on our roads, especially those types of roads. So that could be an issue that we would have to look at as well, if this was to be approved.
Okay, thank you. Heather, go ahead. You have a question.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you. I feel for the position that you're in, Michael. I truly do. I also feel like it's at this point, and further to even Brian's point, a road to nowhere. Although it abuts into your property, it doesn't. And I'm less concerned about having large trucks and public works turn around, although that's important. I'm more concerned about it being a drivable road that somebody following their GPS maybe makes the wrong turn and doesn't realize where they're going and gets dead-ended into that road and isn't able to necessarily navigate because they don't know where they're going and don't necessarily know what they've got themselves into, even for that matter. I mean, I'm hearing unofficial opinions from staff at this point. It sounds like they're not recommending it, just kind of reading between the lines. I don't know if the next step forward, Deputy Mayor, is to ask staff to bring back a formal report on that, or, quite frankly, I hate to say this, but, to help save everybody's time and effort thus far, we look at not exploring it any further beyond this evening. If we think that there's no glimmer of hope of making it happen, because the reality is there is a wetland there. We see it, we know it's there, and this is to your point, Michael. That's even if Orca approves something, based on the new drawings with the new survey. So I would be prepared to make a motion either way to have staff to report back and work with the landowner and the applicant to see if there is a way forward on this. If Michael is willing to bide his time for another couple of meetings, or we just call it what it is, effectively being a road to nowhere and end the initiative at this point.
Okay, was that a motion, Heather, or was it two motions in one?
It was somewhat of a double motion, maybe a question more so to staff about whether or not there is still a glimmer of hope.
Yeah. Alana, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news. I don't believe that staff can come back with a recommendation that's going to fulfill the request that has been proposed this evening. The roadway will never reach the property because of the pond. There isn't the space for the turnaround. The emergency vehicles, we could look at some kind of an agreement about maintenance, but you would never be able to address, the public works vehicles, you'd never be able to address the emergency vehicles, and no agreement is going to not leave us liable to make sure that we can attend to anything there. So unfortunately, directing staff to go back, just not to waste Michael's time, I don't think that we can bring you back anything different than what you've already been presented with.
Okay, Michael, have you got a comment?
Yep. Well, I'm not even sure what to comment. Well, I understand that. I hear you all. I understand what you're saying. I hear where this is going. That it's gonna be a no.
Okay.
It's very unfortunate because we are a bit already frustrated. Over 3 years, we try to do everything properly, and at the very end, whenever we're supposed already to start doing something, we get thrown back to stage one.
I think there's,
I don't know.
like, all we have to do today is receive your delegation. There is somebody that extended a road on the Dummer 6 line north of Webster that happens to be a retired construction person. I'd be happy to give you his name, whether he'd give you a hand when looking at options or not. You can call me after the meeting or tomorrow, and
Okay.
it might be worthwhile.
Okay, I appreciate your help. Yeah, any help is very much appreciated.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so a motion to, unfortunately, to receive it at this stage, the delegation. Is there a motion on the floor? Would somebody like to move it, please? Heather, and Sheila will second it. Any further comments, or Tom?
I'm just curious as to our CAO Alana Arthur's comments there that, we're kind of at a literally we're at a dead end here. There's no, the neighbors have no compromise to help with this. We have to have a turnaround. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. So even if you get somebody that you're gonna have to pay a lot of money to help put the road in, it's still not gonna alleviate the problem that we're not gonna have a turnaround, which we require. So are we kind of beating a dead horse here with proceeding this on further?
I think all we're doing is receiving the delegation at this point, Mr. Watt.
No, I realize that, but I'm just wondering if that's just
doesn't mean
dealing the inevitable, because there's still no option to do what we need them to do.
Well, there could be if something comes forward with an idea of how to solve the problem. I'm not sure there can be, but
No, and I'm just going by Mr. Krasinski's comment about the landowners on either side don't want to sell him any of the property, so he can't fulfill the turnaround at the end. So it's kind of a moot movement if we can't put a turnaround and we can't park on the roads.
Yeah, I cannot go around it on the neighboring property as well.
Okay, then there's a motion on the floor. Anything further? All in favor of the motion to receive the delegation? It's carried. Okay, Michael, contact me through the office and I'll give you, I'm not sure it'll help, but we'll give it a try.
Yeah, me neither, but I will gladly do that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Tom, yes.
Yes, one last comment. So going forward here, can we just make sure this is on another council meeting to finalize it after we get any information back from the applicant as to whether there is any options?
I'm sure Michael would be quick to get it on the agenda again to have another delegation before council.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, Madam Clerk, I think I missed an item on the agenda, 6.2. And whether you, I just caught my mistake there, I think, or did we handle that?
Through you, Deputy Mayor. No, 6.2 still needs to be addressed. That was the part of the adoption of the minutes and business arising from the minutes.
We have appointments of arena facilities for the future ad hoc committee. It's recommended Jim Bailey, Gerard Sullivan, Kerry Riel, and Liam Ryan. And Gerard Sullivan is the individual who is the non-minor hockey individual.
That's correct.
A good choice. And so I guess I need a mover and a seconder for that motion to get that ad hoc committee going. Heather and Tom, and all in favor?
Oh, wait a minute.
Question, Tom?
Yes, if I could, please. In this particular appointment, so do we also do the appointment of Councillor Watson on this, or is that something separate?
I think that was part of the minutes of last meeting, but Martina, is that correct?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, that is correct. It was part of the minutes of last meeting, the May 3rd ones. The amended minutes that I sent out today show the correction because it had been submitted before. Thank you.
Okay, I wasn't sure whether that was like part of this or not. I read them, but I wasn't sure whether it was part of what we needed to pass here. All right, thank you.
Vote again on that motion. All in favor? Carried. Okay, next item. Let's see, other business and staff reports. Report and capital project status, May 2022. Alana, anything further there?
Through you, I don't believe there's anything specific. If anybody has any questions, though, I'm happy to answer them.
One question I have, the future resource for gravel, is that part of the existing items maybe?
I believe we did add that one on there.
Oh, there it is. Sorry. I checked it before and I didn't see it, so it's there though. Thank you. Okay, next item is, so a motion to receive that, please. Tom
With thanks, yes.
and Heather, all in favor? It's carried. Okay, next item, report to council, building department structures and unusual building policy, building department 2022-08. Brian.
9-2.
Sorry, did we skip the animal services one?
Oh, sure.
Okay. We just have Sean Morey in attendance as well.
Yeah, okay.
Get to that one first.
This had the animal control service agreement. Welcome, Sean. Brian, are you going to take us through that?
Yeah, I'll just touch at a high level. So this report we're bringing before you is an updated agreement between the Township of Douro-Dummer and Peterborough Humane Society for continuation of our animal control services and also pound operation. And so PHS staff and myself, Martina and Alana, we worked with through this agreement that, as you recall, I believe it was at the beginning of this year, it was brought up to enter into this new agreement. So generally speaking, there's not a whole lot of changes. It's really just cleaning up the language from our previous agreement, making sure that a lot of the kind of fringe scenarios and cases get dealt with under this agreement. There's a better language there. Generally speaking, the the costs for this will not change in terms of the cost of the municipalities anticipated to pay for animal control services with PHS. Our budget obviously is fairly limited in that department, and we don't anticipate there being any change. Although the service costs that PHS are charging have gone up, those fees are directly recouped by the person who's claiming the animal that has been impounded. So the recommendation is that this report dated May 17th, 2022 regarding animal control services be received, and that council authorize the agreement between Township of Douro-Dummer and Peterborough Humane Society for the continued operation of small animal control services. And both myself and Sean are available should you have any questions.
Any questions from any members of council? Heather, go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you, I'm just looking for a little bit of clarification on the fee schedule. And at what point in time does an owner of an animal who claims their animal, at what point does from when the point that the animal was picked up or brought into the Humane Society, where does it start, where the owner of the animal pays? I see charges for impound and animal intake and admin fees. So I'm just hoping perhaps we can get a little bit of an explainer on how that scenario works, and if ultimately the owner is going to pay 100% of that if the owner comes forward, or if the township pays for the first portion of that animal's journey with the Peterborough Humane Society, if I can say it that way.
Happy to answer that question through you, Deputy Mayor, to Councillor Watson. So the way that it works and the way that we would set it up is for from intake to reunion of the animal to the owner. Essentially all costs associated with that would roll forward back to the owner. So the way the agreement is scheduled and the way that we set it up with all of our municipal contracts and any other contract that we have is that the stray hold period for an animal that comes into our care and services is for 72 hours. So through those 72 hours, that animal is unclaimed and is unownered, essentially, right? So if they don't have a license or they don't have a microchip and there's no way of getting to know that animal or knowing who the owner of that animal is officially a stray animal. So all the fees that are associated with that would be held. If an owner comes forward within those 72 hours, then all of those fees that are included in the fee for service model, so the daily care, the intake fees, and so on and so forth, would then be invoiced back to that specific owner prior to them reclaiming that animal. After that 72 hours, if there is no owner that comes forward, those fees and that ownership of that animal becomes the property of the township. And those fees associated would follow into invoicing into the township.
Okay, thank you. Brian, I noticed your hand and then it disappeared. Do you have further comment on that?
Nope, it just was exactly what Sean just said.
Okay, thank you. Sheila, I think you had a hand up. No? You're muted. Go ahead, Heather.
Just a quick follow-up on this. Thank you, Sean, for your explanation. Let's say more than 72 hours passes and the rightful owner comes forward. What then happens? If the animal hasn't been adopted, of course, what then happens after that 72 hours? Are we still paying for those fees, or is it split?
No, so after that's, again, in a case-by-case scenario, but primarily if the owner does come through, say if it's after the 72 hours, if it's 5-7 days down the line and the owner shows up for that animal, the fee for service model would then continue on with that owner. So our role and focus would be to continue, would be to get that animal back to their owner and to the rightful owner. So we would support that. Just the fee for service associated with those extra days would be a cost to that owner in order to reclaim that animal. And in the event that they were either unable to pay those fees or whatever, then that conversation would be had, whether we would move forward with reclaiming that animal back to their owner, or whether we would hold it as because that at that 72-hour period, it would be property of the township. So I would essentially have a conversation with Brian or a delegate to identify what's the best case scenario for the township moving forward in that regard.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, is there a motion? With no motion yet. Are we happy with the report there to receive the report and go along with the recommendation? Heather, go ahead.
Deputy Mayor, I will move the recommendation that's before us to enter into I believe it's a 2-year agreement with Peterborough Humane Society as outlined before.
And the seconder, Tom?
Yes, sir.
All in favor? Carried. Okay, thank you. It's been passed. Sean, we'll do the bylaw a little bit later in the meeting. And good luck. I noticed you're doing, you're getting more and more capital in for your capital project. We're good to hear that. And as community opinion leaders, we're always promoting your cause. So hopefully some of those promotions are developing into donations to your cause. And you've got a good project there going. So keep the momentum going.
Thank you, sir. Much appreciated. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for all your support. Have a good day.
Good night.
Okay, next item, 9.3, report to council building department structures and unusual building policy. Brian, it looks like you're on the stand again for this.
Thank you. Through Deputy Mayor Moher to council, so the report before you has a bit of a chain from council previous council meetings, and so the report is follow up from October 2020 council meeting, which was actually even before that that got deferred due to COVID. So a notice of motion had been submitted to request the CBO look at a policy implementation for essentially exempting low-level decks that were under that 600 millimeters or 23 and 5/8 in height. My position on that matter was that a policy exemption specifically on that would not be a responsible decision based on a legal opinion and experience. We returned on January 5th of 2021 and identified that the consistent or the current practices were consistent with the OBC. And that we didn't really have room to deviate on those types of practices. So upon that presentation to council, a resolution was passed to sort of to realign the decision or the direction to staff, which was to come back with a new policy that could address this question. So as we started moving through this, I began to look at this question and also a number of other questions that sort of come up on a day-to-day. And we looked at the implementation between, excuse me, the Building Code Act, zoning bylaws, and other applicable law, and it determined that it was a little bit more appropriate to formalize one broader policy for buildings and structures rather than just a specific policy for low-level decks. And so under the Building Code Act, it is the responsibility of the chief building official to establish policies for the enforcement of the act and the building code within the jurisdiction. And so the policy that's attached basically it's defines sort of the non-conventional buildings is what we'll call them. And so there's a lot of buildings, things that are called buildings or defined as buildings under the Building Code and the Building Code Act that a layperson certainly would not expect that to be a building by the strictest definition. And so in outlining all of these items, the procedure of the policy is basically broken into two sections. The first section being those items for clarity, which do require a permit. And a lot of this information is information that's already publicly available. It's already posted on our website and things like that. This just really kind of clears it up into one concise document more for internal staff, and allow for just sort of direction as to when the exemptions apply and when they don't, because everything kind of has a bit of some points to it. And so then the second part of this policy is the sort of the items that don't necessarily require a permit. And some of them on there may be kind of obvious for most people, but sometimes certain circumstances may dictate that those things do require permits. And so all of that's outlined there. The one that specifically addresses the resolution would be in that second section, item number 4, which is the construction of a deck or a platform under 10 square meters in area, not adjacent to other structures, and is permitted by other applicable law, which would include the zoning bylaw, as well as the Conservation Authority regulations. And so that matter there essentially dissolves those 2 previous resolutions. And so the recommendation before you is that the Building Department report 2022-08 dated May 17th, 2022, regarding building department structures and unusual buildings policy be received, and that council resolutions 160-2020 and 07-2021 be dissolved by the CBO approval of this policy. And just we'll note as well that on the policy that you have attached, there was just 2 grammatical errors that have been cleaned up. The first being that the policy number was wrong. I think it said policy P1. The title of the document was P11, which is the correct policy number. Just the title at the very top of the first page said P1. And the second was a grammatical error on some of the retaining wall ones. There was just an extra word that I have now deleted.
Okay, questions, comments? Heather, go ahead, Heather.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. Item number 4 about the low-level decks, of course. This isn't specifying any height, and I know previously the height of that low-lying deck, well, being low, would indicate that it's beneath a certain threshold. Is that height limit covered? I'm assuming it's the 23 7/8 in the OBC, or is it a different number, or it's silent on that?
So the building code is actually silent on height in relation to decks. So the differentiation of the height of a deck has certain code implications, but under the Act itself, which is the governing statute, there's no mention of height. A building is strictly defined as how much area on the ground it occupies or meeting other credentials, but there's no exemption for the height. And so the height is really irrelevant to this policy.
And just to follow up then, for clarification, so in theory, could I build a platform for my clothesline that's under 10 meters square, that's maybe elevated 3 feet above grade without a permit?
Yes, provided that you complied with zoning bylaw and applicable regulations like Conservation Authority, if that was so triggered. If the structure is under 10 square meters and not adjacent to any other structures, then it would not require a permit regardless of the height.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Brian, how big is 10 square meters in feet?
It's roughly 10 by 10. It's 108 square feet, 107.9, but most people think of that as like a 10 by 10 structure.
Right. Okay, any further comments? Tom?
Yes, thank you. Comment, questions, whatever. Brian, what does it exactly mean by adjacent to other structures? Like, so for instance, if I wanted to have a small deck, instead of stepping down 2 feet out of the side of my house, I'm not going to attach it to the house, but I want a small deck there that's, or even one that's 10 by 30, whatever goes along the edge of my house. I'm not concerned about size. It was more the height and stuff like that. What does that mean by adjacent to? That's my first question.
Certainly, through you, Deputy Mayor Moher. So the adjacent to other structures portion, in the circumstance that you just mentioned, with the deck being up adjacent, like up abutting the house, especially if it's being accessed by a door serving that house, that would actually be an addition to the house, not an independent structure. Even if it has a different foundation system, it's still part of the building, the house itself. So in terms of adjacent, we would refer to the zoning bylaw for that circumstance, and depending on what the structure is, like what the 10 square meter or less deck platform is being used for, whether or not it would require a permit. So if it was up against the house, and serving the door, serving the exit, then we would look at it as an addition, you know, potentially the non, you know, like not adjacent to a door and not really access to it. And you were also not impacting the foundation system of the house. So however that house is designed, like every circumstance is a little bit different, but as long as it's not having any impact on the house whatsoever, then it would not be adjacent to. So that's sort of where it doesn't always fit into a perfect box of what is the number that's adjacent to. It really depends on the circumstance. If somebody had to ask and say, you know, what does adjacent to mean by the context of the zoning bylaw, it would be 1.5 meters, which is 5 feet, because that's the definition in the zoning bylaw to differentiate structures. If they're within 5 feet of each other, then sometimes, not always, but sometimes in the zoning bylaw, they can be considered to be sort of occupying one footprint or one structure area. So it's a very loaded question in terms of how you look at that. And so trying to come up with very concise language to cover every scenario is pretty much impossible, to be honest.
Okay, that's fine. And my second one, I know, and we did have a lot of discussion on height. I know Councillor Watson just brought up there a little bit, but I kind of thought in the policy we were looking for something, you know, within a specific height, like, you know, anything 16 inches or lower, kind of like that. And I didn't remember us talking about any square footage, whatever. It was just the height of it. But if someone else wants to correct me in that, I'd be happy to recant. But I really did think, you know, we were kind of thinking 16 and 12 inches, 16, 18, somewhere in that vicinity. And I don't remember a size. So am I wrong on that?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Moher, to Councillor Watt. No, I believe the original notice of motion was to have me look at you know, the feasibility of a policy to exempt all decks regardless of area under 2 feet. Unfortunately, that's not consistent with the Building Code Act definitions, and so the policy before you is consistent with the Building Code Act definitions, which therefore does not place any criteria on the height and just focuses on the area. So it does still clarify that low-level decks, you know, under 2 feet, under 10 square meters, not adjacent to other structures, compliant with applicable law and conservation authority, would not require a permit. But so would a deck that's over that, you know, 24 inches or 600 millimeters, as long as it fits the other criteria.
Okay, any further questions, comments? As I'm chairing the meeting, I know both chairs are supposed to take a fairly neutral point of view on subject matter before council. We facilitate opinions from members of council. This low-level deck, I cannot support, not exempting it. I did a fair amount of research a couple of years ago when I had 2 or 3 hours on my plate one day and did some dropping into some building departments in larger communities. And where the larger communities actually exempt these low-level, anywhere from 12 inches to 23 and so much are exempt because they're just too much of a nuisance to the building department. And when we brought my notice of motion back to council, there was a legal opinion asked for, and I wasn't invited to the meeting. I was somewhat disappointed in that I did all the research and I wasn't invited, but that's fine. I got thick skin. It's happened before. But I think one of the larger municipalities in a October 14th report back to council was that larger municipalities can afford the expense of litigation when these things go into a liability thing. Well, if they're exempt, how can we be charged with being liable when they're exempt? Like the 10-meter square foot structures are the same way. They're exempt from the building code, and I haven't, my 25 years, I can't recall any claims that came out of that. Also, in that same report, it was also there was a statement made that we need the revenue. Well, if that's the reason why we're getting building permits, I'm not sure that that's the proper reason for doing it. We basically have building permits to protect the public that are needing help. Certainly if the public want to come forward and request help with it, that's fine. But when you get into low-level decks, they're pretty basic. And also the third item I want to mention there, and it was mentioned earlier in the meeting, that the height above building code is silent on the height. And I guess I have no problem with over, height over 16 inches or whatever, but these low level, I think it's just a money grab. That's my rant for the day as the chair of the meeting. Brian.
Thank you. To your comments, Deputy Mayor Moher, the legal opinion was not held in a private meeting. That actually came to council on the January 5th, 2020. January 5th, 2021 council meeting. And so the legal opinion that was provided for that indicated that the case law on municipal liability is pretty well set. There's a very well-known case that went to the Supreme Court, which is Ingalls versus Tutkaluk Construction Limited. And in that case, the judge ruled that the purpose of a building inspection scheme is clear, which is to protect the health and safety of the public by enforcing safety standards for all construction projects. The province has made a policy decision that municipalities appoint inspectors who will inspect construction projects and enforce the provisions of the Building Code Act. And therefore, municipalities owe a duty of care to all who are reasonable to conclude might be injured by the negligent exercise of their inspection powers. And so, while we do generally offer or benefit from live immunity for policy decisions, those policy decisions have to align with the legislation. If we make a policy decision that defers or differentiates directly or contravenes legislation, we are now liable for that matter. And so at the end of the day, if I was to implement a policy as chief building official that would exempt something that could result in someone getting injured, we would be named in a lawsuit. And unfortunately, due to case law and the requirements of that, if we deviate from that by having a policy that specifically says that you don't need to get a building permit for something that would normally require a building permit, we would bear the responsibility there. And so in that previous council, or in that previous report as well, just sort of the comment in regard to revenue was not so much as a money grabbing, we need the revenue. It's that we just, the fee is there in order to offset the costs that staff incur. It's not a we need the revenue. In terms of decks, we see very, very low volume of projects that actually apply for decks. Like I think, last year being one of our busiest years, I maybe only issued 1 or 2 standalone deck permits.
So most of the people are doing it without a permit already.
If they are, I'm not aware of it. So generally speaking, if they were, then that would be their responsibility. But if the municipality is not notified of illegal construction, then we certainly aren't liable for it.
Any further comments? What's the desire of council regarding the report? There is a recommendation on it. Sheila.
Yes, I have a question through you to Brian. Just so I'm clear, what is the status of a low-level deck with no railing? I know I've heard all kinds of talk about the building code and everything else, but I need that clear in my head.
Sorry, what do you mean? Sorry, through you, Deputy Mayor, to Councillor Lansing. What do you mean by the status of? Well,
okay, so I can build a low-level deck without a railing as long as it's not bigger than 10 square meters. Is that what you're saying in this?
But yeah, through you, Deputy Mayor, to Councillor Lansman. So if the deck meets the policy, which is that it's under 10 square meters in area, not adjacent to other structures, complies with the zoning bylaw and the Conservation Authority, if applicable, any other requirements, then there would not be a building permit required by the Building Code Act. We would not need to issue a permit, and the person is free to construct that.
And what about the railing?
If it does not require a building permit, we would have no opinion. So if they put a railing in or not, that's the owner's responsibility.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Resolution, time? Heather, go ahead, Heather.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I will move the recommendation that's before us. I'll just leave it at that. I'll move the recommendation.
There's a seconder for that? Sheila? Any comments? All those in favor, show your hand. It's carried. Thank you. Okay, next item is 9.4, 2022 surface treatment, Public Works. Jake.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Deputy Mayor Moher. The recommendation before you is that the Public Works 2022-07 report dated May 17th, 2022 regarding the 2022 surface treatment tender be received and that Miller Paving Limited be awarded the 22 surface treatment tender for the township surface treatment requirements. And further, that council approve the amended projects outlined in the report with any cost overture be drawn from reserves. The township was part of the annual surface treatment tender coordinated through the county of Peterborough. 2 tenders were received through that process from Miller Paving and Dufferin Construction. We have seen a significant increase in our surface treatment costs compared to 2021, largely in part due to the rising fuel costs. While both submissions are over budget, Miller Paving was the lowest tender received. Staff reviewed the projects for 2022 with some hope to reduce the cost overtures, and came up with a couple of small projects, Bradfield Road and the 8th line of Douro, just north of Nassau Road, to help reduce the cost overtures for 2022. This will help with the overtures, and these 2 projects would be then revisited again in 2023 to hopefully complete them at that time, barring there's no other immediate need for other roads to be attended. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, Jake. Questions, comments? Heather, go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you, Jake, with respect, I understand that this was a joint bid through the county. Does it make sense, however, to put it to tender for next year now? And I understand we obviously aren't in a position to, encumber future councils with specific budgets and decisions, and that won't happen, realistically until December or January. That the new term of council will be looking at those budgets. But we know we're going to be doing surface treatment. They're pricing us based on a square meter cost. Does it make sense to try and lock in a rate and then choose the roads what's budgeted in future budgeting years?
Through you, Deputy Mayor. It would make perfect sense. However, I think you'd have a hard time finding anybody willing to bid on something with the uncertainty of prices for a year in advance. So unfortunately, in a perfect world, yeah, that would be great, but I don't think you'd ever find anybody willing to bid on it.
Especially with the price increases
Thank you.
we've seen. Thank you. Further questions, Tom, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, through you, Deputy Mayor. Jake, thanks very much. It really is disheartening, the fact that we have to, we're trying to get ahead, maybe do another road or 2 every year if it's even remotely possible, to try and, to catch up and do some more roads in township. Now we've got to put 2, even though they're not big ones, we have to put 2 off. It's disheartening stuff like that. I'm wondering if maybe some of the, with your road superintendents or AORs or whatever it's called, or maybe even get it pushed up to the county and try and get some pushback and stuff like that. The government to come up with some kind of rebate for us because of these costs going up. That I don't know. It's just a suggestion to put out there that maybe it can be brought up at one of your meetings. That is there a way to push back and try and get some kind of a government rebate back that is going to help us out with these. Look at Paul's got his hand up. He's got money in his pocket. Thank you.
Go ahead, Paul.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I did want to make one quick comment. Maybe it could have been provided as an option in this report. It was, but it wasn't really something I thought of until the last couple of days here. So we did get a larger allocation for OCIF. And so that was going to be something I bring forward to council in the near term with some options for that money. And so, Jake, can you remind me how much those two projects were? I know you said they were small.
Yeah, there were approximately $38,000 would be saving removing those two projects.
Okay, yeah. So our additional OCIF allocation was 130,000. It wouldn't be my ideal to commit it, on the spot here today, but there is money there. An option would be, we do have some reserve funds that we could use for those projects, and I can reallocate or bring a report forward in the future to determine how to spend the additional OCIF funds. And we can do some reallocations of, maybe right now we commit to a reserve, and we can do a change in the future to use the grant instead of a reserve.
Sounds like a good move to me. Tom.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, that's great that we got that extra money. I mean, it's always nice to hear that we did. Maybe a thought too, and I know that I've harped on it a couple of times, but and I know we don't have anything specific in our policy, but we do have in our service treatment policy to any roads that were hard topped and back to gravel, even for maintenance stuff like that, will go back to hard top. So maybe when we get extra money to get that's the time we can move them in and get them redone again. Because I mean, it's really hard with some of the residents that were on a hard top road. They're saying, when's it going to get done? When's it going to get done? It was chopped up 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, but there's nothing in the policy that says we're going to redo it within 2 years or within 3 years or within 5 years, something like that. So maybe that's the time to use some of that money too.
Okay, thank you. So what's your thought, Jake? Have we modify the recommendation there to look at the option mentioned by Paul and move forward?
Through you, Deputy Mayor. Yep. If the money's available there, we can continue with the plan, initial plan for sure. Yep.
Okay. Who would like to move that motion, please? Heather? Seconded by
Not
Tom.
quite.
No?
Not quite. No, sorry.
Okay.
I just wanted to get some clarification on the motion that you're looking to get moved. Are we just delaying this decision until such time that our treasurer and manager of public works can corroborate to make sure that that makes sense? Because if that's the motion you're looking for, that's the motion I'm willing to make. I think that on the spot, as the treasurer had suggested, to just arbitrarily allocate those funds without kind of looking at it with a big picture lens would be a little premature, and I wouldn't feel comfortable moving that forward. But I would definitely support deferring this if it's possible to defer this until such time that our two managers can make sure that that works.
I think, Paul, if I heard it right, were you just saying fund the those two items from reserves? And then
So that, and again, I apologize for kind of bringing this up on the spot. And I understand Councillor Watson's concerns there for making a decision like this without additional background. what I'm wondering is if we could get a motion to approve all the projects except these two, because I'm assuming Jake doesn't want to get anything held up. And maybe even as soon as next council meeting, we could come back with something. Jake and I can look at these two projects, determine their priority, how needed they are, and come up with an option for these two projects. And so we would leave the recommendation as is, and we would come back with an option for these other two projects. I think that's probably the prudent way to approach this.
Okay. Would you move that, Heather? Okay.
Yes, that motion I would support and move, Deputy Mayor.
Second, did I see your hand, Tom? And are we all in favor? Oh, one comment I want to make is the county next year every year they're gradually trying to move the budget approval back closer to the start of the year. And there's another move this year for next year, so that the tendering process and the approval process and the whole process of getting things going early should be earlier and getting better prices, because in the past, I know the county and even ourselves were not approving budgets till March, April, and I think one year even May. And it's you get who's ever left over to get the job done. So all in favor of that motion? It's carried. Okay, thank you, Jake, for the information, and Paul. And next item is Birchview road speed reduction. I think there's a motion in the wings there to.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. If I could just speak to it quickly.
Oh.
The motion is there. Essentially, we're speaking to the speed reduction on Birchview and the speed reduction policy, and potentially deferring those items and bringing those back. In addition, the third recommendation, though, I would like to just have some discussion on the Douglas Road or Douglas Drive and the speed limit reduction for that road. So that request had come in some time ago, and we had asked the individual just to hold off until we dealt with the Birchview situation. And the Birchview situation just didn't resolve as quickly as we had anticipated. So I just would request that when we look at this recommendation, I know we have some direction to come back on the other, but if council would entertain that specific request, I would appreciate it. I know that our manager of public works has looked at that request, doesn't have any concerns with making the reduction. It seems to make sense. Again, our coming back with a speed reduction policy will definitely help this type of situation as well. So we will diligently work on that. But in the meantime, if council has questions about that or would entertain a motion to come back with an amending bylaw to make that speed reduction, staff would appreciate it, as would the person who had requested it.
Okay. Okay, is there a mover and a seconder for that? Tom, go ahead.
For clarification, so Alana, I apologize. So do you want us to just right now, the very first part, do the Douglas Road, Rock Road one as a separate one motion, and then go back and do the Birchview one after?
Through the Deputy Mayor to Councillor Watt, I think either way is fine. We do have some staff direction already. I'm happy if council would like to make that motion here so that we have it in the open minutes. Essentially that portion is going to get done regardless. So I just didn't want to lose the other issue that was attached to this. So either way, I'm happy.
Okay, so if I'm correct here, I'm going to make a motion to follow the recommendation to reduce the Douglas Road from 60 to 50 kilometers an hour, as supported by the manager of public works. And it's where it's a continuation of the Rock Road that's currently at 50 kilometers an hour. And secondly, that we defer our decision on the Birchview Road one till we have information coming back from our solicitor and the consultant that did the road study for more information. Is that suitable?
Through the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Watt, I am comfortable with that.
There's second
Thank you.
motion.
I'm
Sheila,
not repeating.
any questions, comments? All in favor? It's carried. Okay, I think next thing here is committee minutes and other reports. Myself on council or county matters. The public meeting for the OP, the final public meeting is tomorrow. And there's been a number of correspondence received in recent days from various sources. Construction projects for the county are well underway. I'm sure you've seen them out and about. The county are busy getting these streets cleaned of sand, and they've been in Warsaw the last couple of days, so hopefully they'll soon be done there. I don't think there's any other projects that I need to highlight unless there's any questions. Any questions that? So I guess a motion to receive that report, the verbal report, Tom and Heather, and all in favor? It's carried. Thank you. County official plan, technical advisory report minutes. Martina, is there anything else you wish to add to the report there?
Through you, Deputy Mayor. Tomorrow at County Council, there is going to be a public meeting regarding the draft official plan document. So I believe I'd circulated that to council after the last meeting, and I also circulated it to our Committee of Adjustment and Planning Committee in case they were interested or had any comments. I'm looking forward to seeing what comments come out of the public meeting tomorrow. And then we are going to have another TAC meeting after that to review that and see what changes may need to be made or how those can be incorporated. We also just received comments from the health unit, so those still need to be reviewed to see if they're in line with what we're proposing. So there will be more information coming forward. The deadline is quickly approaching, but there's still time for the committee to make any changes that need to be made and get this off to the province. So.
Okay, thank you. Any, I guess a motion to receive that report, please. Heather and Sheila, all in favor? It's carried. Okay, planning committee minutes. Motion there to receive and approve. Heather and Sheila. Was that a question, Tom, or?
No, that was fine. Thank you.
All in favor? It's carried. Okay, next item is Township of Havelock, Belmuthian Rural Transportation Pilot Project. Martina.
Sorry, Deputy Mayor Moore, we missed item 11.1. I think it might be at the bottom of the previous page.
Okay. Okay, notice from AMO, delegation request form. Is there anyone attending AMO that would like a delegation? Okay, seeing none, motion to receive the request. Tom and Sheila, all in favor? Carried. Okay, Township of Havelock, Belmuthian Rural Transportation Pilot Projects. This is getting more and more momentum every day. There's more and more people are looking for public transit in the county. Heather, go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I would make the motion to receive and support. And certainly as those talks continue, include Douro-Dummer in part of those conversations to see how we can work together as neighbors to get some sort of rural transportation in place.
Good.
I'll second.
Thank you, Tom. And all in favor? It's carried. Okay, next item is County of Peterborough 2021 Diversion Report. Any comments there? The numbers are all coming in the right direction. Just for information, there's a public meeting tonight on the city master plan waste management. Hopefully they'll get on board with clear bags soon, because we all realize that there's savings of about 40% going to waste when you convert to clear bags, and hopefully the city will come on board quickly. I guess a motion, anything there, want to receive it, Sheila, or motion to receive? Seconded by Heather. Any questions, comments? All in favor? It's carried. Okay, we're now on to bylaws, adoption of tax rates. A motion, do you want to do all the bylaws, or there's two of them at
Three.
once? Three of them, okay, pardon me.
Deputy Mayor Moher, sorry to interrupt. You may want to do them each one at a time.
Okay. 12.1, 2022-23, adoption of tax rates. Sheila? And Tom? And all in favor? It's carried. 12.2, authorize the service agreement between the Township and Peterborough Humane Society. Heather moved it. Tom seconded. All in favor? If any, no questions? All in favor is passed, carried. And help me, Martina.
Absolutely. So the next one is bylaw 25, which was a lease agreement with Waste Connections. And I
Okay,
believe we're going to defer that for more information coming forward.
okay. Okay, mover,
Motion to
Tom
defer.
and Sheila. And all in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Next is the accounts, and I think one of the, I had a number of questions, and I'm sure, and it was no fault of the finance department or staff. We changed our procedural bylaw to include, we want to see these accounts, and as a result of that, I think we've probably seen 4 or 5, 6 months worth of accounts, and I had a number of questions. And what I suggested that we do is to move it to committee of a whole, and I think we're meeting, I believe, on May the 31st is the plan. I'd like to, if council agrees, to maybe move any inquiries or any questions we have and to the 31st. And it would probably be helpful if we got the questions into Alana prior to the 31st, so that if there's any research required, would be much appreciated. So is that okay with council? Rather than tonight? Okay, Sheila?
Do you want a motion to
You
Move it defer it to committee of the whole?
Yes.
I'll make that motion and provide any questions to Alana prior to the meeting.
Yes. Seconded by Heather. Did I see a nod there? All in favor? It's carried. Okay. Reports devised from previous note. Okay, there's no notice of motion reports, I believe.
We've just lost our chair. We'll just wait a moment while he reconnects.
New guys.
Just rejoining us.
Sorry about that, folks. I hit the wrong button.
You didn't hear me. I said new guys.
Okay. Okay, no, any notice of motions?
No.
Okay, announcements?
No.
Heather?
Deputy Mayor, just really briefly, of course, the township sent out a media release on this earlier I guess late last week, that the Canada Day Parade is happening after a hiatus. The theme is Reunited. Of course, it's happening on Canada Day, Friday, July 1st. And I believe the parade starts at 2:30, and we're looking for community members to get involved, to be part of the parade, and they form up at 2 o'clock. So certainly any inquiries on that can be directed through the township or myself or any one of the committee members.
I'm sure that will be welcomed by many.
Yep.
Hopefully it's a good day. Okay, there's no closed session at this section. Were there any other announcements before I moved on there? Okay, I guess all we need is a confirming bylaw. Is there Sheila? And we got to get out of this meeting. Heather? All in favor? Okay. I'm going to be noticing Alana or Martina putting up their hand here in a minute. Okay, our next meeting's planning committee meeting, the 27th of May. Committee of the whole, May 31st. Are these all starting at 9 o'clock? Martina, do you know offhand?
I believe the planning committee will be starting at 9 a.m. The committee of the whole will be at 10 a.m.
Okay,
and then council will be at the normal 5 o'clock time.
okay, thank you. Okay, I guess thanks very much for your help and getting through tonight. Went well, and now whose puppy is that wants to say goodbye? Tom, okay. Probably
New
getting
Australian
hungry.
Shepherd. She's noisy.
Getting hungry. Well, all the best. Motion to adjourn. Sheila and Tom, and all in favor? Carried. Okay, thank you. Have a good week, folks.
Thank you. Good night, all.
Good night.